چطورین؟ من بالاخره بعد 6 ماه موفق شدم با چارلی صحبت بکنم که متخصص رؤیاهای آگاهانه است. چندین کتاب در این حوزه نوشته، بودایی و چندین سال با یک استاد بودایی کار کرده و آموزش رؤیای آگاهانه دیده. اما قبل از اینکه این اپیزود رو ببینین فکر کردم که خوبه که بیام توضیح بدم که در زیرنویس انگلیسی یه جاهایی به عنوان رؤیای شفاف ازش نام برده شده، یه جاهای رؤیای آگاهانه، اما اینا هر دوش یکیه. رؤیای آگاهانه چیه؟ رؤیاییه که شما در حین خواب دیدن متوجه میشین که دارین خواب میبینین و اگر بتونین خودتون رو در خواب نگه دارین، یهو بیدار نشین، چون خیلی وقتا آدم میترسن، حال میکنن بیدار میشن. اگر بتونین خودتون رو نگه دارین در اون فضایی که در خوابتون هستین، میتونین با خیلی از ترس‌ها، تروماها و مسائل مربوط به گذشته‌تون روبرو بشین و بعضا درمانشون بکنین و تحقیقات زیادی داره در این حوزه انجام میشه و چارلی هم در بعضی از این تحقیقات حضور داره. مثال‌های بسیار جالبی میزنه، ضمن اینکه در این اپیزود تکنیک های این که شما بتونید در خوابتون آگاه بشید یا شفاف بشید رو آموزش میده. امیدوارم که لذت ببرید از این اپیزود. اگر شما هم تجربه خواب آگاهانه داشتید، خواهش میکنم که برای من تو کامنت ها بنویسید. اگر که بعد از شنیدن این گفتگو خواب هاتون شفافتر شده یا بهتر به یادتون میاد، به من اطلاع بدید. و اینکه اگر که بعد از اینکه این تکنیک رو یاد گرفتید تونستید با بعضی از ترساتون روبرو بشید، من خیلی دوست دارم اونا رو هم بدونم. این شما و این گفتگو، امیدوارم که لذت ببرید. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to this episode of Obsicast. I promised this episode 6 months ago. Some of you might remember that I promised to speak with Charlie Mowley about lucid dreamings. Since then, Charlie had a baby. He's become very busy, so it was very difficult to get hold of him. 6 months later, the baby is on solid food. Absolutely. So Charlie is finally able to join us. It's so lovely to have you on the podcast today, Charlie. First time I heard about you was from another guest who suggested that we have to have you because I went through a stage of being fascinated by dreams. Just before we start, Charlie has written 3 books. Dreams of Awakening is a copy that I have. Use lucid dreaming to rewire your brain while you sleep. This is your most recent one, yeah?
Yeah. Do
the shadow work. So Charlie has now moved into a new aspect of the work. Do the shadow work by Charlie Mowley and Wake Up to Sleep. Was this your first one?
No, that was my third one. That's more about, that's kind of my insomnia book. So for people with stress and trauma affected sleep, based on the work I was doing with veterans.
Excellent. So 5 powerful practices to transform stress and trauma for peaceful sleep and mindful dreams for those of you who want to dig deeper in Charlie's teachings. I highly recommend looking up these books and you can do deeper work. It's lovely to have you on the show, Charlie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. How's the baby?
Baby's well.
Yes.
Fatherhood's great.
Yes.
I've been really interested actually in the activation of like the father archetype within, the big F, which I hadn't really thought of. I'd been so concerned with, Chloe's pregnancy and the baby coming to the world. I hadn't thought not only are we having a baby, but I'm becoming a father. And I had, a few months off of doing no work, but then a month or so ago, I started doing retreats again. And what I found was I wasn't quite as sharp as usual running the retreats. I'd had kind of 5 months off. But what I did find was this new kind of holding for the space and the people that was different. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I realized it was the father archetype, not in a kind of negatively like paternalistic way, but something in me had changed. The way I was running the retreat was, there was this holding and I was like, oh, that's being a father, and seeing us all as children rather than kind of students who'd come to learn. And I think that made the retreat even better.
I'm sure it has. But being a parent definitely shapes us, and changes things and changes your relationship with everything and other humans as well, because you realize that at some point, that person who we, in our view, might not be a good person, was a baby in someone's arms. And it just changes your relationship and you just put more love into it. Even despite the way they have grown up to be.
There is, because you've mentioned that exact example, there's a powerful lucid dream from a friend of mine I'm going to share that has exactly that image in it. But anyway.
We'll get to it.
Come later.
So, starting from you and your journey, tell us, how did you become a sleep expert? What brought you on this path?
I was into dreams from really young. So my mum, I mean, she says I was like 5 or something. Who knows the kind of myths of our childhood, right? But I do know from very young, my mum would ask me in the morning, what happened in your dreams? And I know sometimes I'd just kind of lie and make stuff up, but often I would remember and I would tell her. And I realize now my mum was allowing me to keep like a verbal dream diary for kind of years in early life. But my first experience of lucid dreaming was just before my 12th birthday. I remember asking my dad for this thing that I found in the Sunday papers in the 90s, I guess this was. You used to get this little gadget thing with mail order gadgets that you could get. And I was flicking through that, and there was something in there called a Nova Dreamer, which is this sleep mask that claimed to be able to recognize the rapid eye movement of dreaming. And when it did, it would flash red lights, which were bright enough to penetrate your eyelids, but not bright enough to wake you up. And they would induce lucid dreams. And I'm reading this thing, and I was like, oh, a lucid dream is a dream where you know that you're dreaming, and then you can choose to direct the dream. And I was like, I have those. I know I have those. And I said to my dad, hey, can I have this mask? It helps me have more of those dreams. And Dad kind of confirmed that. Now, I never got the mask. I went back to being a 12-year-old. But that was my first kind of verified mention of lucid dreaming. And then when I was about 15, I, like many young men and women do around that age, I started questioning. You know, things seemed bigger than people were making out. And I started reading about Buddhism and some books by the Dalai Lama. And then I got back into lucid dreaming. I remember going to the library at school and finding one book on lucid dreaming. And I started reading it and doing the practices, because it is a learnable skill. You can train yourself to have these dreams. And then I started having these dreams at will. But at 15, like, all I was using them for was like sex and skateboarding, and two things that I was very into at 15. One I was not doing much of, skateboarding I was doing a lot of. And I would kind of have these dreams just for fun, kind of hedonism. And that lasted for a couple of years. And then when I was 17, I started to really get into Buddhism. And I started to read in these Buddhist books that there was something called dream yoga. Dream yoga. That was a translation of the word Milam Naldra in Tibetan, but translated as dream yoga. And this was the spiritual practice of lucid dreaming. So using the ability to wake up in your dreams for your spiritual practice, to question the nature of reality in both the dream state and the waking state, and finally to prepare for the moment of your death. And I remember reading this stuff and being like, whoa, those dreams that I've been having and just messing around and having sex and stuff in the dream are actually could be these powerful spiritual experiences. So I started to get really into that. And then I took refuge, which is where you formally become a Buddhist. Or when I was 19, they give you a new name and they take some of your hair, and it's like a christening, like a Buddhist christening. And then I started training with these Buddhist teachers. And then eventually I lived in a Buddhist temple for 7 years. And when I was 25, my Buddhist teacher thought it'd be a good idea for me to start giving workshops. And that was the authorization to teach thing.
So for those of us who don't know what a lucid dream is, what is a lucid dream?
So it's when you hear the term lucid dream, it sounds like we're talking about vivid dreaming, because lucid, connotes kind of clarity, clear seeing. Actually, the word should probably be conscious dreaming, because the definition of a lucid dream is any dream where you're sound asleep, but in the dream, you become conscious and you go, oh, wow, I'm in a dream right now. My body's asleep in bed. I'm inside my own mind, and I'm walking or flying through this huge 3-dimensional virtual reality simulation of my own psyche. That's a lucid dream. So anyone listening or watching who has had that experience of being in a dream and going, wow, this is a dream right now, and then choosing what to do, that's a lucid dream. Have you had a lucid dream?
I've had one that I would definitely categorize as a lucid dream, in which I realized that it was a dream. At the time, I didn't know about the term lucid dream. I called it a psychedelic dream.
That's maybe even better word.
But since then, I read your book, but it looks like a very rigid practice. I haven't been that dedicated.
Sure.
But I'm fascinated.
But you know that experience of being in the dream and having that aha moment, right? Yeah. So that's it. If anyone says, was this a lucid dream? Was it half a lucid dream? I'll always say, in the dream, did you have that moment of, I'm dreaming? And if you did, that's a lucid dream. And of course, for many people, their first few lucid dreams, they have the aha moment. I'm dreaming, this is so cool. And then they wake up because it's so exciting. You know, we think that a lucid dream will be like in the Hollywood movies. You know, when they show a dream sequence and suddenly it becomes soft focus and they have the dry ice and they all kind of floaty. It's not like that. A lucid dream is like going from normal definition television to like, boom, full 4K HD. It's like putting on spectacles. Suddenly everything becomes incredibly bright. But you realize you're inside your own mind. So that is, by definition, an incredibly psychedelic experience. So I think a psychedelic dream is a good name for it too.
Thank you. Maybe we should coin it. Title of your next book.
There we go.
So how do we train to lucid dream?
I think the first thing before we start the training bit is actually to know that we all have had lucid dreams before. Children naturally lucid dream. So there was a couple of studies at Harvard and a couple of studies in the UK actually looking at UK school children, and they concluded that lucid dreaming is a natural phenomenon of childhood brain development. So not every child every night, but the majority of children will have experienced multiple lucid dreams over their childhood. So the first thing to know is you probably have lucid dreamt before, dozens of times. You just don't remember it. So we don't actually need to learn how to lucid dream. We need to remember. And one of the easiest ways to remember, and this is a slightly different approach to what you said about the kind of rigid training, is actually to have a sense of fun around it. Because the dominant archetype at the time that most of us had our first lucid dreams was the inner child. So rather than actually seeing it as a rigid training that we have to have a lucid dream, if we can have a sense of play, of like, oh, cool, wouldn't it be amazing if I could have this experience of being in my dream and then choosing what to dream about? I could fly, I could walk through walls, I could meet parts of my mind, I could heal my trauma, I could work with my inner child. Having that sense of wonder, that's actually the best technique for becoming lucid tonight. And some people will get lucid just from watching this, because you'll watch an interview about lucid dreaming, and if you leave at the end of the video, if people leave going, wow, isn't that cool? Imagine if I could do that. They will probably get lucid tonight quicker than those of us who maybe follow the book and kind of work rigidly through it. But after you've done that, yes, there are trainings you can do. A lot of them are like self-hypnosis techniques that you do as you fall asleep. A lot of them are essentially based on prayer. You know, we might call it affirmation, but if you've got a spiritual practice, then we can call it prayer. Some of them are about disrupting the sleep cycles. So you have like dreams are longer and easier to become lucid in as the night progresses. So often we'll kind of, on my retreats, we'll wake people in the second half of the night when they're more likely to become lucid. And then there's daytime training, because essentially we dream as we live. So if we live in a state of non-awareness, if we live in a state of kind of a blinkered vision, we will dream in the same way. But if you get people to spend the day looking closely, really opening their eyes, again, like a child, and constantly asking themselves, am I really awake right now? You know, I seem to be awake, but am I really awake? Am I truly present? And if you do that again and again and again during the day, and anytime you see anything that's kind of strange or dreamlike, you ask yourself, well, am I sure I'm not dreaming now? You know, am I awake? Am I here? Am I present? If you do that enough in a day, you will dream about doing it. And if you have that acknowledgement in your dream, God, am I awake right now? Something sparks in the dream, something kind of hits off, and bam, you can become lucid. So a lot of it is daytime awareness training.
And is that all we need to do?
I mean, there's like dozens of techniques, but yeah, I would say there are the daytime techniques, which is awareness training, the nighttime techniques, which are akin to self-hypnosis techniques, some prayer techniques, some sleep disruption techniques. And then there's the ability to actually enter the dream directly. So you meditate from the waking state through the hypnagogic into dream with no blackout. That's the kind of one of the not most difficult, I'd say one of the pinnacle techniques. Because if you can do that, then you're transitioning from the waking state into dream state with no loss of awareness. And that's actually really great training for the death and dying process too, apparently.
How can we avoid the blackout?
Just training. You know, in the same way when people try to meditate the first time, we just start thinking about, we're going to have for lunch, our knees, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? The kind of chatter starts. But eventually we keep training the mind, just like we train the body. And eventually the muscles of our mind, just like the muscles of our body, become stronger. But if you have a daytime meditation training, or actually any form of daytime mind training practice, that will definitely impact upon your ability to lucid dream.
And journaling?
Yeah, so waking up in the morning, writing down your dreams, that's like the first technique. So I've got a feeling you actually want some techniques here. So
I want the techniques, yes.
Okay, cool.
I want people who are listening to, when
as you mentioned, when this interview is finished, I want them to go to bed tonight. And
Okay, I've got you.
Okay, these are the things I need to do.
So the
Doesn't
first...
mean they'll continue to buy your books. But
No, it wasn't that at all. I just want to make sure we're giving them space. Okay, so they're a thing called the 4 Ds. These are like the foundational pieces of lucid dreaming. So the first D is dream planning. This is deciding why you want to have a lucid dream. So really looking at the benefits of lucid dreaming, which I'm sure we'll explore in this interview. So what can we use lucid dreaming for? Well, in the same way as a hypnotherapist takes a strand of the conscious mind down into the subconscious and then plants seeds of healing intent, with a lucid dream, you're doing the same thing, but you're taking a strand of your own conscious mind, not just down into the subconscious, but into the depths of the unconscious. So essentially, anything you can treat through hypnotherapy, you can treat through lucid dreaming. So people working with confidence issues, working with trauma, athletes who want to get better at their sport, people preparing for things in the waking state, asking big questions, doing your spiritual practice, preparation for death and dying, healing childhood wounds. There's so much potential in lucid dreaming. But make sure you know why you want to have one.
So intention setting.
Intention, but more than that, being really specific. If I get lucid tonight, this is what I want to do. And what I want to do will profoundly change my waking state. Your dream plan should make you salivate. It should turn you on psychologically. It should make you excited to go to sleep. Like, wow, if what he says is true, if I can cure my nightmares in my lucid dream tonight, wow, I can't wait to have one. Or if I can work with my childhood trauma tonight, I can't wait to have one. Or if I can do my spiritual practice within my lucid dream, I can't wait to have one. That sense of really, really having a good reason why. That's the first D. The second D is dream recall. So training the mind to remember your dreams. And the first thing I'd say about that is that everybody dreams. Some people say, I don't dream. What they really mean is I don't remember my dreams, because it's impossible to stop the human brain from dreaming unless you have like a heavy head injury or a stroke. And even then the brain will kind of rewire itself after a couple of weeks. So everybody dreams every night, but we don't all remember our dreams. So the first thing is to set that really strong intention to remember your dreams. So as you fall asleep tonight, you'll pass through something called the hypnagogic state, which is that kind of drowsy first stage of sleep. You can still hear the sounds in the room. You can still feel your body in the bed. You might get those weird jerk things, myoclonic jerks as you fall asleep. That's a natural state of hypnosis, hypnagogic. So when you're in that state, be reciting over and over in your mind, tonight I remember my dreams. I have excellent dream recall. Tonight, I remember my dreams. I have excellent dream recall. If you can, 21 times at least as you fall asleep. The second D. The third D is the dream diary. So writing down your dreams in some way. Could be in your phone, could be in a dream diary, but the act of journaling the experience of the night. And the reason we do this in this process, in this practice, is actually not so much to interpret your dreams, although I think that's great, but it's a slightly different cup of tea. We write down our dreams so we can start to spot and recognize patterns. So let's say we write down our dreams for a week, and then we read back through our dreams and we see, oh, I often dream of that beach we used to go to as a child, but I haven't been to in 20 years. Or, oh, I often dream of being back at school. Or I often dream of my dead grandmother. We'll see these things that we dream about, but that don't happen in real life. So we can start to see the environment of our dreams, what we tend to dream about. And these are called dream signs. Anything that only happens in your dreams, but doesn't happen in the waking state, is a dream sign. And the reason we write down our dreams is to start recognizing our dream signs. Because once you recognize a dream sign, you can then before bed tell yourself, well, the next time I'm on that beach I used to be as a child, or the next time I see my dead grandmother, I know that I'm dreaming. It's got to be. That's the only explanation. So I must be dreaming. So you start to create these lucidity triggers between the content of your dream and the fact that you're dreaming. And this is what leads to lucidity. And eventually you'll be in a dream, completely unaware, your dead grandmother will appear, and memory trigger will go off. You'll be, oh, my dead grandma, what does that remind me of? Oh, she's my dream sign. Hang on, my dream sign. Whoa, I'm in a dream right now. Bam, and you become lucid. When it first works, it is so cool. Because I know we shouldn't get attached to concrete evidence of results in spiritual practice, but it is nice sometimes to know we're on the right track, right? So if you do this for a couple of weeks, eventually you will be in a dream, you will see a dream sign, and recognition will occur. You might wake up straight away, but recognition will occur. And then you've got proof. You're like, wow, this works. I go through this practice step by step, and eventually I start to recognize my dreams. And of course, with practice, not only will you see my dead grandma, oh, I'm dreaming, you'll then go, and because I'm dreaming, I'm inside my mind. And now what did I choose to do? Oh, I wanted to heal my childhood trauma. So I will now call out for my inner child, this symbolic representation of my childhood to appear. And if you do that in a lucid dream, they will appear. Like a personification of mind will appear, because in a lucid dream, psychological concepts become personified. That's like the crux of it from a psychological point of view. So you can meet your fear. You can embrace your inner child. You could call forth a symbolic representation of your trauma, of your post-traumatic stress, and then embrace them or send them love. And this will have a powerful healing effect on the mind, which will affect you in the waking state. Yeah.
That was the third D.
That was into the fourth D, because that's dream signs.
Dream signs.
So dream plan, decide what you want to do. Then set your strong intention to remember your dreams. Then write down the dreams you remember. Then from the dreams you remember, recognize your dream signs, which are the triggers that could make you become lucid. And then before you go to sleep tonight, remind yourself of your dream signs and have the strong intention to recognize them should they appear. The way the recognition works is it's like, let's say you owe me £20 and you think, oh, I've owed Charlie £20 for weeks now. The next time I see an ATM, a cash point, I've got to remember to get Charlie his £20. And then you forget about it. We don't speak for a month. But, a couple of days later, you're walking past the bank, you see the ATM and something's triggered, isn't it? You go, oh, wait, the bank, I need to get money the money for Charlie. That's prospective memory. So the goal-orientated part of the mind will stay engaged until that goal is met. So we set this goal. We tell the mind, if I see my dead grandma, wake me up in the dream. If I'm back on that beach from childhood, wake me up in the dream. And that's how dream signs work.
You briefly said that we are going to get into it later about the benefits. I know that you mentioned a few, but one of the questions that a lot of people asked me when I got excited about your book and I was telling you about lucid dreams is that, yeah, but why do we need to do that?
Okay. I want to share for my first lucid dream the one that you did this for, because it's got that in it. And I think that's a wonderful synchronicity. So this is a friend of mine, Kerry, and she wanted to use lucid dreaming to work with some abusive relationships with men that she had in her past. And that was really affecting her current relationships with men. And so she made a dream plan that in her lucid dream, she wanted to meet some sort of symbolic representation of this trauma and this abuse. And then because she had seen my first TED talk, and I give this instruction of how if ever you meet something terrifying in your lucid dream, know that it is a terrified part of you. If you meet a monster in your lucid dream, it's not some external monster, it is a monstrous part of yourself. And what are our inner monsters but the wounds we carry? We become monstrous because we've been traumatized, because we've been hurt, because we've been wounded. So she made this dream plan that whatever would appear in the dream, she would hug it, she would send love to it. Because how do we heal? With love. So she made this plan. And in her dream plan, she had assumed that the symbolic representation of the abuse might be like a cloud of red smoke, or a kind of a monster, like a goblin or something like that, something symbolic. Actually, when she became lucid, she said to me, Charlie, it was way worse. It was actually the person, the abuser. And she became lucid and she called out her dream plan. So she called forth this symbolic representation of the abuse. And I'm wearing one flipper on my foot, not two, just one. And that's why he was hobbling. It was me from the photo in these little Speedos wearing the one flipper. And that's why he was kind of moving like that. And I saw him in the dream. I thought, wow, it's me from the photo. It's like a three-dimensional, like holographic image, but solid.
And you realize that in the dream.
Yeah, I was like, and this man appeared. And the lucid dream is so realistic. Like I said, it's like HD. So she said she saw this guy and she said, I would have preferred a monster. Anything but the actual person. But he was there, and she reminded herself, wait, my body's asleep in bed. This isn't real. I'm in a dream right now. So this is just my mind creating this kind of hallucination of the abuser. So I'm safe. And I know that he's a part of me. So she moved towards him and she hugged him. And in the TED talk, I talk about when you hug your inner monsters, they'll turn into light. And she was like, Charlie, I was waiting for it to turn into light. It didn't happen. She said, I hugged him and she said, I could smell him. And he smelt the same. That always stuck in my head. But she hugged him and just kept on saying, like, this is me. This is me. This is just the wounded part of me. And as she's hugging him, he starts to get smaller. And she's like, whoa, something's happening, something's happening, something's happening. And then she does that and he disappears. And she looks down on the floor and there's a baby, a swaddled baby. And she picks up the baby and rocks him in her arms. And she said, that's when the healing began. And the first time she told me the story, I didn't actually quite get it. I said, what, like, why? Why did the healing begin then? She went, I realized he was once a baby. He was not born the abuser that he became. He was once an innocent baby who was probably abused himself. It led to this trauma being passed on. And so she's rocking this baby like this, and then she starts to chant the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, which is like a compassion mantra in Buddhism, and it radiates through the dream, and then she wakes up in floods of tears. And I asked her how the dream had changed her in the waking state. And she said the main thing it had changed was, she said she didn't wake up and felt like, oh, that abuse never happened to me, I'm totally healed. Those wounds were still there, but she said her relationship to them had changed. And a big thing that changed in her life was her relationship to her dad. Now, she said her dad was nothing to do with the abuse at all, but because he was the dominant male figure in her life, because she had been wounded by other men, it was then affecting her relationship with her dad. She had it completely transformed her relationship to her dad. And without telling him about the dream, he seemed much more gentle towards her. And then a couple of weeks later, she said, not only is my relationship with my dad still great, but I've taught him the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, and we were chanting it together, just like in the dream. I was like, oh, wow. And actually, that dream's in my second book. It was so amazing. I was like, oh, Kerry, can I put this in the book, please? This is brilliant. So there's an example of what we can do in the lucid dream. It's a bit like the psychedelic experience. You know, in the lucid dream, our mind becomes represented symbolically, so we can interact with parts of our own psyche in a very visceral way. You know, we're in kind of daytime talk therapy, and perhaps the therapist might ask to do parts work, where we set up two chairs, and I sit on one, and I imagine that my inner child is on the other chair, and I ask questions to my inner child, and I stand, I enter into that chair, I become the inner child, me at 10 years old, and I answer the questions back. Really powerful form of therapy. However, in a lucid dream, you don't need to imagine becoming your inner child. In a lucid dream, if you call out for your inner child, bam, they appear before you. You can touch them. You can feel them. In fact, another one, just because it's a nice one to share, is the first time I met my inner child. And I hadn't heard of anybody using lucid dreaming for inner child work before. But so many people coming to my retreats with issues from their childhood, I thought I should really try this. Now, I was one of those people who before therapy thought I had a wonderful childhood. And then you start doing therapy and you realize, oh, wow, it's a bit more complex than that, isn't it? And I knew that in my teenage years, I really kind of messed myself up. But childhood there wasn't any kind of acute trauma with a capital T. So I thought it was a safe dream plan to do. And I became lucid, and I called out Little Chuck, because I made a dream plan and I named my inner child Little Chuck. So I thought I'll give him a name so then he can appear in the dream. So I became lucid. I'm dreaming. What did I want to do? Remember the dream plan. Oh, I wanted to heal my inner child. So then in the lucid dream, I call out, Little Chuck, come to me. Little Chuck, come to me. Now, I'm asleep in bed. You know, if anyone wants to know what a lucid dreamer looks like, they look like this. You know, they're not like meditating. Yeah. They're not
like ayahuasca purging.
Yeah, they're not that. You're asleep. You are sound. You're in REM dreaming sleep, which comes at the end of a cycle. So you are snoring away. So I'm snoring away, but in my mind, I'm fully conscious. I'm dreaming, and I call out Little Chuck. And then in the distance of the dream, I feel a bit of fear, because coming out of literally the shadows is this small figure who's like hobbling like this. And I just had a moment of thinking like, oh no, what if there was some abuse from my childhood? And I basically called it into the dream, because this thing, it looked like kind of a Quasimodo figure, like hobbling. And then when he came closer, I realized what it was. And I've shared this picture on my Instagram recently, so you can find it. There's a photo of me at a pool in Morocco, and I'm 5 years old. I'm in these little green Speedos.
This is me from the photo.
Oh yeah, like once you're lucid in a dream, you can, like, if you get lucid tonight, you can be in the dream and think, I can't wait to tell Charlie about this tomorrow. This is so cool. Oh, I wish that happened before the podcast. You know, you can have full access to waking state memory. So I'm in the dream thinking, oh wow, that's me from the photo. And then I hadn't really planned what to do next. So I thought, well, if in doubt, hug. You know, and I say this to anyone, if you get lucid tonight and you can't remember what to do, you haven't made a dream plan yet, hug everything. Because if everything in the dream is you, and if the hug is the symbolic representation of love and acceptance worldwide, hug everything. I mean, hug the people, hug the chairs, hug the books, hug the floor. It's all you. It's all a projection of mind. So show love to everything, essentially. So I see this little version of me and I hug him. I remember the feeling was he was so skinny. You know how kids are all bony and skinny? And I remember thinking, oh, you get so much bigger. So I'm down there hugging him like this. And then he says something. And I thought, whoa, I was not expecting that. He whispers in my ear. He goes, what happens? And I was like, what happens? And he goes, just looks at me like that. And I realized he was asking, what happens in our life? He was acknowledging that I was maybe 35 at the time I had this dream. He was basically asking me what happens in the last 30 years. And I had this moment in the dream of like trying to like give a summation of my life. And I was going, oh, well, we do lucid dreaming and we write books. And, oh, you love lucid dreaming. We write books about lucid dreaming now. And it was this wonderful moment of like explaining to my younger self what we did. And he seemed pleased. And then he said something. He went, how's mama? And at that point, my mum was really ill. And I guess I kind of lied to him. I kind of told the truth. I don't know. I said, she's okay. Because she was, because like illness is okay. And death is okay. It hurts. It's hurting now, but it's okay. And I realized then that it was my inner child that was most scared of my mum dying. You know, out of all the questions he could have asked, he asked, what happens in our life? Of course, he was curious. He's a child. And he was worried about his mum. And then I cried as I'm crying now in the dream, and the tears woke me up. So that's how the dream ended. And then I thought, wow, I had no idea you could do this stuff in a lucid dream. And if that was me who had a childhood with no major trauma with a capital T, imagine what people could do if they had experienced childhood sexual abuse or any form of childhood abuse. Imagine the work they could do through their lucid dreams. So from then on, in the last kind of 7 years now, I've been really teaching people that practice inner child healing through lucid dreaming. And when I first shared that dream years ago now, there was a South African therapist on the course. And I told that story then. And she put her hand up and she went, sorry, you're telling me that in the lucid dream, you can meet a representation of your inner child, the archetype of the inner child. And I went, yeah. And she goes, you can talk with them. You can touch them and you kind of know what you're doing. You can direct the dream. I said, yeah. And I remember her kind of gazing up and going, it can take me months to get my male clients to even admit they have an inner child. You're telling me you can meet them in the dream and talk to them. And I said, yeah. And she went, this could change everything. And I remember that this could change everything. And I think it can. I think, you know, not enough people know about this yet. Lucid dreaming is non-invasive, non-medical, non-addictive. It's free. You literally do it in your sleep. What could be more of an amazing practice for now? And yet a lot of people don't know it exists. And my mission, by the time I make it into the death state, is that this does become mainstream knowledge. Because this is a spiritual practice that everybody can do. It's incredibly powerful. And like I said, it's non-addictive, there's no therapist to pay, you do it yourself. So it's an incredibly empowering form of healing.
But do we need any help interpreting it, or is that something that the individual can slowly decipher themselves when they have a lucid dream?
You don't really need to know what happened. Like, this is the cool thing about lucid dreaming. Either the healing works or it doesn't. You know, especially people work with phobias quite a lot. And there's a lot of science on this. Lucid dreaming can be used in like a form of exposure therapy. So if you're scared of spiders, for example, you can go into the lucid dream, interact with spiders that will seem incredibly real, so real that your brain thinks you are actually interacting with spiders, leading to waking state decreases in fear triggers. So you'll basically be less, you can integrate your fear through lucid dreaming. And when people ask, how will I know if the phobia has been integrated? I'll say, well, the next day in the waking state, you will have less of a fear response. That's how you know. You don't need to pay anyone to interpret it or to tell you if it worked or not. You kind of see in your everyday life, am I less triggered by that? Has that neurosis become integrated? Is my inner child, more free to express themselves? So no, you don't really need interpretation for it. You will know whether it works or not.
It's interesting you say that, because I gifted your book to a friend of mine whose son had a fear of football
Fear of football.
Yes.
That's interesting.
So every night before football, he went into a phase of crying and refusing. He didn't want to go to school.
Because he was like forced to play football at school.
No, he loved football, but just being on the pitch gave him a lot of fear. And he learned about lucid dreamings, and he himself, age 9.
Brilliant.
One morning he woke up and said, I had a lucid dream and I was okay, and he was done.
Amazing.
Age 9.
So what was did he use the lucid dream to kind of play football? Yes. And then to integrate the fear, realize I'm okay, this is fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's such a cool example. Not only does it match with this idea that children are natural lucid dreamers, but also if we look at the neuroscience of this, of course there's no way to prove this with this child, but there is a lot of neuroscience on lucid dreaming. Once you become lucid, the part of the brain that reactivates that is not usually active during dreaming it's actually the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. But let's just say the front part of the brain where the sense of self lives. And that makes sense because once you become lucid, you go, oh, I am having a dream and I can control or direct the dream at will. So it makes sense that that's a part of the brain that switches on. But a interesting side effect of prefrontal cortex activation within the dream state is that neuroplasticity comes back online. So the ability to rewire the brain based on repeated action or newly learned skill. So this means that once you become lucid, whatever you do in the lucid dream is not just dreaming about it. As far as the brain is concerned, you are doing it. And the brain will start to rewire itself, hence the title for that book, Rewire Your Brain While You Sleep. The brain will rewire itself based on the activities in the lucid dream. So that little boy who became lucid and then played football without fear in his lucid dream, it wasn't just a good confidence boost for him. The next day, his brain will have changed because he did what he had never done before. And of course, what's the easiest way to create a new pathway in the brain? Novel action. If you've never done it before, the brain necessarily has to create a new pathway because it's never taken that route before. So yeah, I think that little boy not only boosted his confidence, he changed his brain.
But it doesn't work with every child. I tried it with my son, who's also 9.
Yeah.
And when he goes to bed, I tell him that that you have control over your dreams. Maybe that's something. He said, "Mommy, I don't dream. Don't try hard." Yeah, and he always says, "No, don't try. I don't dream. I don't dream." And say, "Everybody dreams, Amen, but you just don't remember." He says, "No." So he's reluctant.
Who knows? My friends have been teasing me now, saying that when my daughter grows up, of course she won't want like lucid dreaming because daddy likes it.
Uncool.
Oh, I don't want to do that. Yeah, mom likes it.
Don't like plant medicine. They think,
oh, there you go.
Yes, jungle, Mexico, anything about that's so uncool.
Yeah, like I say, not every child every night, but the sports thing, just because it's interesting to look at this neuroscience. They've actually done a lot of the science on lucid dreaming has been around athletes because basically the data set you get on athletes is really clear data. How many press-ups could you do? Well, let's train them to do lucid dreams in press-ups. Let's train them to do press-ups in lucid dreams, and then we can see how many press-ups they can do. So athletic discipline is a really good data point for lucid dreaming. So there have been loads of studies on this. Long story short, if you train people to lucid dream, and then in the lucid dream, they practice sports, so they practice martial arts, or they practice football, or they practice press-ups, the next day in the waking state, when you test them, they get better at that athletic discipline than before the dream. This is nuts. Like I was part of one of these studies, 81.3% of martial artists. So this was a study where they took martial artists and got them to practice their martial arts in the lucid dream and then checked them in the waking state. So 81.3% of the 25 people in the study got better at martial arts by training in their lucid dream. I was in that study. I actually wasn't one of the 81% who got better. So who knows? I think I'm not as good at martial arts as I am lucid dreaming, but you can actually see this. It's not just imagination. You can actually get better at stuff by training in your lucid dream. So let's say maybe not sport, but let's practice our spiritual practice in the lucid dream. Let's practice kindness in the lucid dream. Let's practice being fearless on the football pitch. Let's practice integrating our inner child. If we do that in the lucid dream, it's not just like kind of imagining it, or it's not just like having a hypnotherapy session for it. As far as the brain's concerned, it's like we have done it. So we can make lasting changes to our brain while we sleep. And that's like one of the coolest aspects of lucid dream.
How often do you lucid dream?
The last 6 months having a baby. Okay. The first few weeks were great. I started calling them Nova-induced lucid dreams. That's my daughter's name. because I would have so many of these lucid dreams. I would have what's called the false awakening. Maybe you've had this where...
Because you're a little bit alert.
Exactly.
You have to, you're ready to respond.
Precisely, Rada. You know this. So I would dream that I had woken up, but I wasn't. I was still dreaming. So I would dream that I had woken up. She was crying. I'd go to her crib and I'd comfort her. Then as I comforted her, I'd notice the crib looked slightly different, like it was at the wrong angle, or the blankets were different. And I'd think, hang on, that blanket, I see the dream sign, the blanket isn't correct, and I became lucid. So I'm now lucid, fully lucid in the dream, but there's little baby Nova there. So I know that she's just a projection of my mind, but I thought, well, I shouldn't just ignore her. So I pick her up in the crib and I think, what would a baby want to do in a lucid dream? And I thought, I don't know, maybe fly. Everyone loves flying. So I took up her little arms like that and we flew around my flat. Like I was kind of standing, but I was helping her fly around the flat and she was going, oh, loving it. And then another one, I became lucid and I thought, okay, so I know that it's not really Nova. She's just a projection of my mind. It's my inner Nova. And I thought, well, whether it's actually her or my inner Nova, doesn't matter. I should still, show them love. So I started saying these affirmations. So I picked her up in the dream and then the whole dream became her face, like just her face, a massive face. And I was going, Nova, you are welcome. You are loved. You are welcome. You are loved. I don't know if it had any effect in the waking state, but I know we have a very close bond.
Of course it has.
So yeah, I was having loads of lucid dreams in the first few weeks from Nova. Then the sleep started, the kind of through the night. And then I was getting... It's weird. I was so tired. I wasn't even writing down my dreams as on my book says you should do it every night. And I was like, what a hypocrite. I'm not writing down my dreams. But then more recently in the last kind of month when I've started teaching again and running workshops again, then I've started having lucid dreams again.
Tell me about the role of substances, because I know that there's some African roots that I bought from Amsterdam that are sold for lucid dreams. Is there anything that we can take that makes it easier to lucid dream?
Yeah, you can. I mean, because I teach lucid dreaming from, I present it in a secular way, but I teach it from my roots in Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is very little use of substances. It's seen, you can use substances, but it's seen as kind of a very, the last resort, because your mind has everything you need. So I would say you don't need any substances. Your mind can train. The techniques in the book or the techniques that we've shared here today, those are strong enough to induce lucid dreams. But the placebo effect is very strong when dealing with sleep and dreams. So things like mugwort, for example, like mugwort actually doesn't really have any psychoactive compounds that we know of that will affect dreaming. But it has for thousands of years been used for dream and sleep practices. So there's something in the essence of it. I mean, I believe non-scientifically that yes, there is these spirits of mugwort that we're working with here. So yes, there are herbs you can use. I'm quite interested in using the herbs from the lands we are in. So if you were born in Britain, for example, as I was, I'm quite interested in mugwort as a dream, and also clary sage. Horrible smell, clary sage, but powerful effect on dreaming. And there's also the African dream root I think you're talking about. It's called Mpepo, which is a Southern African.
Good pronunciation. Well done.
I've got a friend of mine, just Sharma, said you must do it with the click. Mpepo. That one is slightly psychoactive.
But you take tiny bits, so it's like a tiny teaspoon.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if this one was burnt. You kind of burn.
Oh, okay. No, this you eat. You mix it with water.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Then there's several Mexican ones.
Blue lotus.
Oh, blue lotus, of course. That's slightly psychoactive. Yeah, that'll affect sleep. Again, I don't tend to kind of offer any of these because
and how about the bad effect of substances? I would put caffeine in that category, or alcohol. Is it less likely for us to have a lucid dream if we are on a bad, I don't want to call it bad, but on a certain diet, or we consume certain molecules?
Very interesting.
That affects on our sleep?
Yeah, so generally the Buddhist teachings say that clear dreams come when we have a clear body and a clear mind. So we should avoid impurities, whatever that means. When we do the lucid dreaming retreats, for example, we have an early dinner, like 6 p.m. dinner, and it's just soup and salad. So very, very light. So by the time you go to sleep, you're not hungry, but you're definitely not digesting anything. If you go to sleep with a heavy stomach, then all of the blood flow that should be going here to power the dreams is being diverted here to power the gut and digestion, which is why you get this old myth of cheese gives you nightmares. Cheese doesn't give you nightmares, but long strain proteins like hard cheese, like a hard block of cheese, like Mozzarella isn't going to affect your dreams, but if you ate a block of Parmesan before bed, hard, long-strain proteins, your body's going to spend so much time trying to digest it that the director of your dreams has limited blood flow. So you might get some kind of weird, maybe not nightmares, but very strange dreams. Nonsensical, maybe a bit nightmarish. It's not the cheese. It's to do with the blood flow that's being diverted. So if we can stay quite light in our stomachs, that's good. Also, caffeine and alcohol, really interesting you've mentioned this. It's not quite as clear-cut as you might think. Now, going to sleep drunk, you are very unlikely to have a lucid dream because clarity goes with drunkenness, right? But some people who've been like really uptight with their lucid dreaming practice, sometimes I do say to them like, maybe let's have a glass of wine with your dinner. Just to relax a little bit so that when you go to sleep, rather than, right, I've got to have a lucid dream tonight, where's my dream diary, really uptight, you're like, okay, lucid dreaming tonight, that's quite fun. So sometimes a little bit of alcohol could even be helpful for some people. Same with caffeine. Going to sleep jacked up on caffeine, you're not going to be able to sleep, let alone dream, right? So not a good idea. However, having a little bit of caffeine in your system for some people, if they are the kind of people who like, as soon as their head hits the pillow, they're knocked out, having a little bit of caffeine in their system
them in a
less allows them to drop through the hypnagogic without blacking out. And it's in the hypnagogic that you do all those self-hypnosis affirmations. So it's not quite as black and white as that. And then as far as kind of like vitamins, for lucid dreaming, that's the only thing I would recommend because it's a vitamin, it's good for us anyway. Vitamin B6 and B12 have been proven to increase the vividness of dreaming.
Really?
So B12 and B6 are good for us anyway, especially for vegetarians.
Do we take them before bed or in the morning?
I would say just rather than taking them in the morning, maybe take them with your evening meal. And I think popping a pill before bedtime is a slippery slope. So I would say, I'm not that into kind of using substances for lucid dreaming, but B6 and B12, like a Barocca, if you're in the UK, you can get those effervescent tablets, Barocca. Those are great. Have one of those with your evening meal and then you'll be full of B6 and B12 at the night time and you'll have more vivid dreams. And obviously, the more vivid they are, the easier it is to go, oh, wow, I'm dreaming right now and become lucid.
And how about melatonin?
Melatonin, again, is an interesting one. So melatonin isn't actually like a sleeping pill. It tells the body now is the nighttime. So people with jet lag and stuff, melatonin can be really helpful. People with, disruptive sleep patterns, maybe even people who, have recently had a baby and sleep deprived and stuff like that, melatonin can be helpful. It won't really affect dreams in any way. Okay. It just invites the body.
Because I thought that maybe it takes you into a deeper sleep where you don't dream.
Not necessarily. Melatonin will invite sleep earlier. It's basically sending signals to the brain saying, now is the time for sleep, rather than actually affecting the structure of sleep. Whereas things like caffeine, for example, having too much caffeine can actually affect the architecture of sleep. So you spend less time in deep sleep if you're having a lot of caffeine after 2 p.m., this is based on a midnight bedtime, right? If you're having caffeine a lot after 2 p.m., that's going to be in your system too late enough to affect the actual architecture of your deep sleep, which is why if we were talking about sleep hygiene rather than lucid dreaming, I'd be much more strict on the caffeine.
Tell me about your retreats, because people don't know much about lucid dreaming retreats. There's so many other types of retreats out there. And then people hear about this, so we're going to retreat to sleep?
Yeah, so the retreats are these are my favorite thing, right? And I do a lot of teaching online and I've got pre-recorded online course in the books and stuff, but what I really love, my kind of flagship offering is the retreat. So usually they're 3 or 4 days, and during the days we will be learning the lucid dreaming practices. We'll be doing a lot of yoga nidra, which is a form of lying down meditation where you meditate in the hypnagogic. We'll be basically rehearsing for the nighttime, learning the practices, learning the certain meditations, learning about how sleep works, how nightmares work, creating our dream plans, everything to prepare ourselves for the night. Then people have an option. So at night, they can either choose to go back to their bedrooms and just sleep in their rooms, or they can, and about half the group usually chooses this, they'll go back to their rooms and sleep from, 11 till 4, making sure they have at least 5 hours of sleep just in their rooms by themselves. Because the first 4.5 hours of your sleep cycle are mainly deep sleep with little bits of dream. And we don't want to mess with deep sleep. That'll affect your body and your brain. So keep that clean. However, the second half of the night, you stop having deep sleep and you go into these long REM, rapid eye movement dreaming periods. So that's what we want to target as lucid dreamers. So if you like, you set your alarm for 4 a.m, and then you move from your bedroom in the retreat center back to the shrine room or the workshop space where you have bed number 2 set up. Like it's like indoor camping. So people have a camping mattress, a sleeping bag, a pillow. And then I'm in there as your human alarm clock, and the lights will be low, and I'll have the singing bowls and stuff like that. And I will then guide people back into the sleep and dream state. And then 2 hours later, the lights will go up again. I'll wake everybody up with the singing bowl. Everyone will be sitting up, writing down their dreams, writing down their lucid dreams they might have had. Then I'll remind them of another technique, guide them back into that state again. And they have another session. And we do that 3 times in the night. So you have 10 till 4 in your room, then 4 till 6 in the space, then 6 till 8 in the space as well, optional. If you do that, then the thinking behind it is, rather than falling asleep once and waking up once in the morning, giving you one chance to engage the practices, you got some crazy guy waking you up 3 times a night or even 4 times a night, you have just quadrupled your chances of engaging the practice. So it's like lucid dreaming boot camp. And
I hate you by then.
So for some people, it's a nightmare. And I'm like, if it's a nightmare, stay in your room. Like, you can still follow the practices. Some people take a middle path. They still do the 2-hour sessions, but they do it in their room. Great. That's the middle path. But some people, they really like the energy because it's like a spiritual slumber party. You've got like 20 people in this room, all with their dream diaries, looking at their dream plans, dropping back in. You've got kind of me in there guiding the practices. It creates these causes and conditions that really increase the volume of lucid dreams. So a lot of people, if they have struggled to have a lucid dream before, they'll come on the retreat. That's when they have their breakthrough.
Are there anyone who doesn't have a lucid dream in the retreat?
Oh, loads. Yeah, I'm sure. So some people will get lucid in the 4-day retreat because that's their personality type. They work really well with the kind of lucid dreaming boot camp with, strong energy pushing towards a goal. Other people's personality types, they have kind of performance anxiety. And actually on the retreat, they probably won't even remember a dream, let alone have a lucid dream. They leave the retreat feeling a bit down on themselves. But I'm never down because I know what's going to happen. Usually about 2 days after the retreat, I get these emails. They're like 4 o'clock in the morning. Oh my God, I had my first lucid dream. And then about 2 weeks later, so about 2 days after the retreat, and then 2 weeks after the retreat, you get another rash of 4 a.m. emails saying I had my first lucid dream. It's just personality type. Some people work really well with that intense learning. Other people have a bit of performance anxiety. They need to go back to their room, back to their home, and then they get lucid 2 nights later. Other people, it takes a while to integrate the practices, so it's more like 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm yet to meet someone who can't lucid dream. It is.
So it's something that anyone can.
Everyone can do, yeah.
And is that something? So let's say I go home tonight and I set the alarm for 4 a.m. and then I put myself back to sleep.
So those multiple wake up things, don't do that every night. That's just when you do it like in a retreat environment. If you wanted, I often tell people to do like a lucid dreaming date night, maybe once a week on a day where the next day they don't have to wake up for work or the kids are with someone else or something like that. And you could have a lucid dreaming date night, go to sleep early, stay in bed late, because obviously the more sleep you have, the more dreams you have. The more dreams you have, the more opportunity to become lucid. So lucid dreaming is a great practice if you like to stay in bed, because it's saying, suddenly staying in bed is my spiritual practice. It's not some sort of, I'm not being lazy. Yeah, exactly. So you'll love that. So yeah, maybe once a week you could do those multiple wake-ups. Or, some people wake up to pee in the night. I know as I get older, I wake up to pee twice a night now. So that's great. So I've got 2 opportunities when I drop back to sleep to be doing the affirmations.
Maybe that's why people need to go to the loo as they get older.
There you go. It's the universe preparing them for lucid dreaming.
Yes. It's interesting. The practice you mentioned reminds me of the Muslim morning prayer.
Absolutely.
Because you have to wake up before the sunrise. You say a very short prayer. It's not a long one. I think the purpose is that the problem is that then you have to do the wuzu, which means there's water involved. So you have to wash your face. That wakes you up.
And it's to awakening.
And that wakes you up. But a lot of people then they go back to bed and they can sleep for another hour or 2 depending on their lifestyle.
There's a lucid dreaming technique called wake up to bed, which is basically you wake up 2 hours before you usually wake up. You stay awake for between half an hour and an hour, then you go back to sleep for 2 hours. What you describe sounds very similar to this. And of course, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was absolutely a dreamer. I mean, the call to prayer came to him in a dream. He would share his dreams with his disciples in the morning. He prescribed people having an afternoon nap. That morning prayer you mentioned. I mean, I have no proof to say he was a lucid dreamer, but he was an awakened being, right? So I'm sure he was a lucid dreamer. And we can say definitely he appreciated the power of sleep and dreams, possibly more than any of the other prophets or leaders of religions. You know, Buddha and Muhammad are the two ones who are really into dreams.
But also shamanism has some serious teachings about dreaming.
So not just Tibetan Buddhism, shamanic teachings, the ones that I know, the lineage I know best is the Toltec Mexica lineages of Mexico. They have a full-blown lucid dreaming practice and even a form of kind of like pranayama, very similar to the Hindu pranayama breathing techniques, where like they will close one nostril, breathe out, visualizing the feathered serpent coming out of one nostril, then breathing in, belly breath, so close to the Hindu yogic tradition, thousands of miles away, completely unconnected, and yet I think they were connected somewhere else because so similar. So Mexico has a long history of lucid dream tradition. The Sufis have several lucid dreaming practices that are very similar to the Buddhists. So I think back in the day, there probably wasn't Buddhists and Sufis, they were just practitioners, right? And they would share these techniques. Lots of tribes in the Amazon have lucid dreaming practices. Often they will use plant medicine to induce lucid dreams, but absolutely it's still the technology to induce lucid dreams. Perhaps even the early kind of Gnostic Christians were into lucid dreaming. There's less proof for that, but if you look at the Nag Hammadi Gospels, and especially the Gospel of Thomas, they use this metaphor of the lucid dream. It says things like, how can you bear to be asleep when it's your duty to awaken, wake up to the sunrise? And you're like, it sounds like they were aware of this idea of kind of waking up in their dreams. So perhaps it even appears in Christianity too. But yeah, the Tibetan Buddhists do not have the monopoly on lucid dreaming. You find it in so many other traditions. It just happens to be the tradition that I learned it through.
Is there anything else you want to add about the lucid dreams? Because I would then like to get to your most recent book, Shadow Work, and I want to know what it is that you're doing there.
Yeah, I think I would like to touch on the lucid dreaming for post-traumatic stress disorder work we've been doing, because I think that's really interesting. Lucid dreaming has been a valid practice for treating nightmares for decades. So there's like dozens of studies, because if someone has chronic nightmares, if you can train them to become lucid in their nightmare, go, oh, wait, I'm not really back in that car crash or in that zombie apocalypse, whatever their nightmare is. I'm simply dreaming I'm there. And now I can change it. I can make the car not crash into the wall, but fly into the sky, or I can turn the zombies into flowers or something. You know, they can change the nightmarish aspects of the dream, leading to these higher levels of well-being. And even better, actually, studies have found that if you train people with nightmares to lucid dream, if they can become lucid and just stay in the nightmare, witnessing, because that's what the nightmare wants them to do. It wants them to see, wants them to witness, and to see how the mind has been wounded. It's like an immune response, nightmares, nothing wrong with them. So long history of lucid dreaming being used to treat nightmares. But a few years ago, I got a call from a scientist in San Francisco working at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, who asked me, do I think that lucid dreaming can be used to treat not just nightmares, but the waking state symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, such as flashbacks, hypervigilance, depression, anxiety? And I didn't know what to say. I was like, maybe, I think so. Anecdotally, people have told me that their symptoms have reduced, but no one's ever done the study. So it took a couple of years to get funding and stuff like that, but we eventually did a pilot study where we had 1 week where a group of 55 people, all of whom had chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, I like to say post-traumatic stress display, there's no disorder at all about it. They had to have quite a high level of PTSD to get onto the study. So these were not mildly traumatized people, this was a heavily traumatized group. And at the beginning of the study, they had their PTSD score taken, which is quite arbitrary, but it's like a medical way of diagnosing someone's current trauma level. And in the group, the average trauma level was way above the PTSD threshold. So really traumatized group. Then I had a week with them to teach them lucid dreaming. Not only how to lucid dream, but how to intentionally use their lucid dream to treat or to affect their trauma. So some of them did have childhood sexual abuse. So what did I advise them to do? The inner child dream that I had, very similar. I said, don't worry about the abuse, worry about the child that was hurt. So call out for your inner child, and then whatever appears, you embrace them, you show them love, you show them tenderness. Some people were military veterans, quite a few were military veterans. So for them, their aim was to become lucid in their recurring nightmares and not wake up, not try and change the dream, but just witness it and know, like, this is not happening now. That was then. I am empowered. This is my dream. I am safe. I am loved, you know, these kind of affirmations. One woman, her PTSD manifested as chronic pain and she had chronic pain that couldn't be explained medically. So she became lucid, and in her lucid dream, she called out, "Chronic pain, I release you. Chronic pain, I release you." And when she did this in the lucid dream, a huge golden lozenge appeared, like a throat sweet, a lozenge, huge gold-plated lozenge, and then radiated this light which entered her body, and she woke up shaking. We can assume, or she said the lozenge was like a symbol of healing. Mm-hmm. So I train people how to have lucid dreams, and not only how to become lucid, but how to engage healing like this. And in the week, the vast majority of people had a lucid dream. Many had multiple within a week. And of those, many of those were classed as a healing lucid dream. So they were able to actually engage with their trauma in a healing way. And then the end of the week, we took their PTSD score again to see whether their level of trauma had remained the same, got worse, or got better. The results we got were so kind of shocking to the scientists. They thought there was a problem with data collection, because the average PTSD score at the end of the week was so low that 85% of the participants were now beneath the medical threshold, meaning that if they were to get diagnosed again, they would not be diagnosed with PTSD. So they double-checked the results, then triple-checked them, and then were saying, okay, the results seem to stand up, but we need to do a follow-up, because maybe the day after this study finishes, their trauma will return. You know, how do we know? Maybe a flash in the pan. So a month later, it's now a month of no lucid dreaming, no contact with me, no contact with the group. They took their score again, and it had remained as low. It actually dropped about 2 points on average below. So we had proof that lucid dreaming was one of the most powerful interventions for PTSD available. We were then lucky enough to get more funding to do a randomized control trial. That's like the gold standard, where you have 50 people not training in lucid dreaming, 50 people training in lucid dreaming. We did exactly the same things. We got pretty much the same results. Around 80% of the group compared to the control group had this huge reduction in their PTSD score. So we're pretty sure that this is a thing now. There's only 2 trials. We want to do more, see if it's replicable with other people, not just me. And lucky enough, I have a team of therapists now who I've trained up who will now be able to offer that same treatment. But it definitely seems like it is one of the most powerful interventions for post-traumatic stress disorder currently available. So we really want to push that.
Charlie, Mowley, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're running out of battery. So that's why we couldn't get into the shadow work. I hope I'll have you back on the show.
I'd love to come back.
Hopefully, we're not going to wait 6 months for the next.
There are no other babies on the way, I promise you that.
For now. Congratulations on the new role. The most beautiful journey of life is parenthood. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and doing the hard work that will help a lot of people out of their state of mind so they can live a better life.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for hosting this podcast, asking such great questions, and for giving a platform for people to discuss topics that they may not have heard of before. So thank you so much. Keep doing your brilliant work.
Give thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.